Oil pulling, is it good? Is it bad? I mean, what even is it? Oil pulling has become a very popular topic. Now, what exactly is oil pulling? Oil pulling is basically when you take some coconut oil and you put it in your mouth and you swish it around for about 20 minutes and then you spit it out. Now, why on earth would anyone ever do that? The main reason people do it is to reduce the bacteria in your mouth. It's basically like a natural mouthwash. Now, some people even claim that it whitens their teeth, gets rid of bad breath, and does all these other sorts of benefits. Now, does it work? Well, when it comes to lowering the bacteria in your mouth, well, yeah, it probably works. We don't have a ton of data on it, and actually, we hardly have any data on oil pulling. But from what I've seen, if you do it correctly, then it can reduce the bacteria load in your mouth, and specifically the bad bacteria that are in your mouth. Now, the caveat here is doing it correctly, because from what I've seen, you have to do it for at least 10 minutes to get these benefits. And that's the lowest amount of time I've seen. I've even seen up to 15 and 20 minutes. But yes, if you do it correctly, it can lower the bacteria in your mouth. So this study was looking at 60 different adults, and it had them do this oil pulling for 10 minutes a day for 2 weeks straight. And it found that compared to just swishing your mouth with distilled water, that it significantly reduced a bacteria called Streptococcus mutans. Now, this is the bacteria in your mouth that causes cavities, because when you eat any sort of sugar or carbohydrate, then the strep mutans will eat that carbohydrate, and then it'll release these acids as a byproduct, and those acids will cause these holes or these cavities to form in your teeth. So based on this study, if you oil pull for 10 minutes a day, then yeah, it can help prevent cavities because you're lowering that strep mutans. Now, what about other things like gum disease? So this other study took 20 adults and put them into two different groups. One was a control group and one was an oil pulling group. The group that was oil pulling was able to significantly reduce the overall plaque that's in their mouth compared to the control group. Now, plaque is basically this gunk of this bacteria biofilm that sits on your teeth. And this is what you normally remove when you just brush and floss. But this study found that if you oil pull, then it can also help reduce some of that plaque. Now, another cool benefit I think you can get from oil pulling that hasn't really been studied a lot is it can help with dry mouth. Dry mouth is a really big problem, and a lot of people don't realize how much it can cause cavities and gum disease. Because when you have this saliva in your mouth, it has a lot of these minerals, and it can also flush away a lot of this plaque and bad bacteria. So basically, saliva is like a bodyguard for your teeth and your gums. But when you don't have the saliva, like when you have a dry mouth, then you're gonna be way more susceptible to getting cavities. And you're also gonna have a more acidic mouth because your saliva can kind of dilute a lot of these acids. But when you have an already acidic mouth, because you have a dry mouth, then you're gonna be even more susceptible to getting cavities. So this oil pulling is cool because it kind of acts like a moisturizer, especially for people that already have a dry mouth. Now, what about bad breath? Well, it makes sense that if you're able to lower the amount of bacteria and plaque in your mouth, then yeah, it's gonna help you with bad breath. But this is when you have to start getting a little realistic, because we have studies that show that yes, it can lower the amount of strep mutans and plaque and other bacteria in your mouth. But how much more can it do that compared to brushing and flossing? Well, we just don't have the answers to that right now because there's no real studies on that. But I can pretty much guarantee you that if you take someone that regularly brushes and flosses and you take someone that never brushes and flosses, but all they do is oil pulling, then the person that brushes and flosses are gonna have way better smelling breath. So if you want to do some oil pulling or something like that, yeah, that's fine. I don't think it's going to hurt you, but it doesn't take away from the brushing and flossing. Now, some people also claim that oil pulling will help whiten your teeth. Well, there's no real data to support that. Again, the main benefit you get is the bacteria in your mouth get lowered. So if you're washing away some of the plaque and bacteria in your mouth, yeah, your teeth might look a little bit whiter, but probably the same as if you were to just brush your teeth and floss. Because just lowering the bacteria in your mouth is not how teeth whitening works. Typically, teeth whitening involves products like carbamide peroxide or hydrogen peroxide. These materials actually penetrate into your enamel, and they will kind of oxidize the stained molecules that are inside of your teeth. And in doing so, they convert them to a lighter molecule. So that way, when light reflects off your teeth, now it looks a lot whiter. That's how the whole teeth whitening and bleaching process works. And oil pulling will not do any of that. So my opinion on oil pulling, personally, I don't do it, but I really don't care if you do it. I don't think there's anything really that can harm you. There are a couple things, and we'll get into that, but really I think it's pretty safe, but you should definitely not neglect the brushing and flossing. And there's also things like diet and other oral habits that also play a big part, so oil pulling will not make up for all these other things. And it's also not a substitute for visiting the dentist, because when you go and get your dental cleaning, what they're removing is something called tartar. And this tartar is basically this biofilm on your teeth that has hardened and calcified. And now it's kind of stuck to your teeth. So your toothbrush, your floss, and oil pulling will not remove that. You actually have to get it scraped away at the dental visit. And it also doesn't replace any dental procedures. Like if you have an actual cavity and you need a filling, or if you have a tooth infection, oil pulling will not fix those issues. You have to get that procedure done. So I think you should use oil pulling more as a prevention along with your other brushing and flossing if you want to do it. Now, one thing to note with oil pulling is that it can cause some issues. So not necessarily with your teeth, but a lot of times with your TMJ. This is actually the #1 side effect from oil pulling, is that it can cause jaw pain. And the reason is you have to swish it for like 10, 15, or 20 minutes. So if you already have some jaw issues, then your jaw can get really sore for sitting there and swishing this around for that long. And also if you accidentally swallow it or breathe it in, then it can cause some other issues. And it can even make your stomach upset and even cause diarrhea. And also when you spit out this oil, make sure you don't spit it into your sink, because that oil can kind of clog your drain. So that can turn into another whole issue. So make sure you spit it out in the trash. So all in all, to me, I feel like swishing this around for 10 minutes just isn't worth it. And I feel like I can get a lot more benefits just doing the standard oral hygiene stuff that I always do. But if you do oil pulling and it works well for you, let me know in the comment section below. There's a lot of talk about ice baths and cold showers and all the amazing benefits you can get from it. But at the same time, there's also people saying it's all BS and there's no real point in even doing it. Now let's talk a little bit about cold showers specifically. Now a big pillar of this is a guy named Wim Hof, who is basically this freak athlete, and he can handle